I'm excited to welcome our next presenter. He is an esteemed colleague of mine, and he is very loved by many Amplitudeers, but more importantly, he's very loved by his customers. So please help me welcome Mark Dondeville. Green button.
Okay. I didn't know we were doing Price is Right, where I have you guys come on down, but we'll just have you come up to make it a little easier. So we have Chris Madison with Possible. We could Teresa Thomas with Outreach.
That was good.
Gooi with Microsoft. And from the wings, we have Ryan Svedin with Rosetta Stone. Awesome. So just to get a pulse on the audience, how many people joined us last year in Seattle? We got 2. Awesome. Well, I am great with faces, so I look forward to seeing all of you here again next year. So everyone, welcome to Summit 2018. I personally am super excited about this panel. As a success manager, this is part of my core competency is getting into the minds of a PM, so there's a selfish aspect to some of the questions that I'll be asking, but I still hope you all gain something from the panel as well. And as a reminder, there's a lot of things you could do offline with your iPhone. This is going to be your guys' one hall pass to just go down the line to answer a question. So just brief introduction on yourselves, a little bit of background on where you're working, what you're doing, and then a fun random fact, like if you just welcomed your 4th child into the world, or...
You just took his random...
Spoiler alert. Sure. I'll go first. My name is Chris Madison. I'm a senior product manager at Possible, which is a digital agency here in Seattle. I build products for Microsoft and AT&T. I have over 6 years of experience. I also have a master's degree in information systems and business, as well as I also do product tank and product school mentoring to help aspiring industry professionals and new graduates get into product management by reducing the barrier to entry. So, yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Teresa. I've been in the product management space for almost 8 years now. I'm at Outreach now, and prior to that, I was at Microsoft. Outreach, for those of you who are not familiar, is a customer engagement platform. So our customers are sales reps, and they use Outreach to really optimize all the communication and engagement that they're having with people that they're selling to. So my team specifically works on bringing in data and information about customers onto the platform so sales reps can use that during their selling motions. Fun fact, random fact, my favorite restaurant in Seattle is Machiavelli. It's in Cap Hill. It's this beautiful Italian restaurant. If you haven't been there already, go tonight, totally worth it. And try their tiramisu while you're at it.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Svedin. I'm a senior product manager at Rosetta Stone. I'm in charge of their mobile products. Rosetta Stone offers language learning software for the consumer market, enterprise, and education. And so I work with our different stakeholders to ensure that we can get the right features built for each of their segments. I've been there for almost 5 years now. Previous to Rosetta Stone, I was at Starbucks, and before that I was at All Recipes, doing the same thing, working on their mobile products. Fun fact about me, I love building products both for work as well as at home. At home, my products have been housing related though, so I've been remodeling my house since 2011. So it's been a very long-term project.
Hi, my name is Gooi. It's pronounced the same as graphical user interface. This is not a code name, and coincidentally, I've been working at Microsoft for 15 years. I spent about 5 to 7 of those actually working on UI and UX experiences. And since then, I've been working a lot on analytics, first helping the company understand about usage and engagement of Office 365. And more recently, been working on people analytics, which is analytics to help our end users and organizations understand how to actually work better together.
Awesome, thanks. Teresa, you're up first.
Okay.
So you spent a lot of time at Microsoft in various teams in various capacities. So being at a smaller company like Outreach, how are you thinking about building products for that audience? And how has that switched from what you were previously doing at Microsoft?
Yeah. The biggest thing about Outreach and what's unique about it is the space that we're in. It's what we call sales and customer engagement. So it's not really a vertical or a niche that existed even up until 2 years ago. So we can't really look around and say, oh, this company's doing it this way, let's just follow and copy them. Or, we don't really have a path that's carved out for us. So a big part of our jobs is figuring out, like, what do customer engagement reps or sales reps, what do they really want, and what problems can we go solve for them? And there are a few things there where, like, in the world of sales, actually, if you think about it, they were kind of left behind when the tech boom took place. Salesforce came along and did a lot in terms of giving them ability to store the data that they need, but there wasn't a lot that was done to really change the everyday jobs of sales reps. So that's where Outreach is coming into the picture, and that's what we want to transform. And a lot of times, like, where we have to think differently is selling has been done for centuries. There's a lot of art to it. How do we take that art and add science to it without taking the human factor away? So we're hyper intentional at Outreach in the product team about where should we do automation, where should we not do automation? Like, where is a human good at this versus like a machine being good at this? Another thing that we often have to think about is when you think about our customers or our end users, sales reps, they're not necessarily like tech savvy or like tinkerers that they want to go and like mess around with technology and like find out what's like the latest and greatest. They are trying to do their jobs, and they're using this as something to help them do their jobs. So it's really about, are we saving them time, and are we really coming in and seamlessly fitting into their existing workflows? I think part of your question was like, what is the difference between Microsoft and Outreach? Lots of differences, lots of similarities. I think one big difference, at least as a product manager, is the relationship that you have with your customers. At Microsoft, I was in the team that built the mail and calendar applications for Windows 10. So we had millions of users. And when you have millions of users, it's sometimes easy to reduce them to like a device ID or like sort of think of them in aggregate. When you're sort of even like at a smaller company, especially B2B, a lot of customers have faces and names, and you have a relationship with them. So in some ways, you see the impact of your work and how it changes someone's everyday a lot closer. There are pros and cons sort of for each model. In one case, you have big data. Like, we don't really have a lot of big data. But I think that relationship is like one aspect with the customer that's been very different.
Awesome. And kind of going with the customer theme, Ryan, Rosetta Stone has made a pretty massive transformation. I remember seeing the commercials to learn German or Mandarin 15 years ago, thinking I should buy a pack of 20 CDs. And now you guys are more of a subscription-based company. So how have you guys gone from being this marketing focus to being a product-first, subscription-based organization?
It's been a long process. So as many of you, when you think of Rosetta Stone, you probably do think about 15 years ago where you saw a yellow box on the shelf someplace, probably at an airport, or you saw it on TV or on the radio. We do still have TV ads. We still do have radio ads. So we are still a marketing-heavy company. But our focus has slowly shifted over the years. So instead of trying to do like a one-time purchase, we've tried to move over to the subscription model where we actually do need to focus on different things. So 2017, one of our big focuses, how can we go ahead and do a one-time sell? So we used to redo our sign-up flow over and over and over again, and that was kind of all we did. But the shift that we've done, I want to say, in the last 6 months has been huge. So we brought on a new language president who now oversees all of our language business, which is our marketing teams for both consumer, enterprise, and education, as well as our product teams and our analytics teams and sales teams. And so now we have like a North Star that we're driving to. Instead of having two separate sides of the orgs with two different leaderships, we do have that central vision. And we've slowly making other shifts there. So instead of redoing our sign-up flow over and over again, we're actually focusing on like, what are our customer problems? What can we do to solve that? Like, learning a language is hard. How can we go ahead and make that easier for you? Coming back and learning something for one day, how do we get you to come back on day 3 and day 5? We don't expect you to come back every day, but how do we get you to come back 3 times a week and come back week after week and after week? So we're actually doing a lot of new innovation there. Similar to the pirate ship example that you heard earlier from Suzanne, we adopted this framework where we're calling them tiger teams. So I'm the lead tiger, and we created these little tiger personas. My team was Mobile Awesome, so we called them Awesome Tigers. And then, so the tiger team though was like a cross-functional team, and so generally you think of like you have like your product team where you might have like a product manager, you have like 5 developers, a couple designers, some QA. That ends up being a large team. We took one person from each function, and not necessarily each function, from different functions in order to put together these tiger teams, and each one was tasked with certain things. And so like part of my task was how we can go ahead and like make our mobile product awesome. And that doesn't only mean like from like a day one of experience, which what we would have thought about previously, how do we get you to convert over to a paying customer immediately, into what can we do to keep you coming back and using our product over and over again. And so bringing these cross-team collaborations together, like now we have like the product and marketing team has the best relationship we've ever had before in the past, because through these teams we started working with each other, seeing what's important to each other, working on features together, measuring outcomes together. We all have one source of like the North Star that we're all driving towards. It really has made a huge difference.
Cool. And then Gooi, for you, I know that we could oftentimes overcomplicate things as we get in our heads, and we, as Suzanne mentioned, we have this huge sheet and we start cutting things up and putting ideas on the board. But what you guys are trying to do is just make things easier. So as you're going to try to make things easier, how does that tie into your product first initiative and doing what's best for your customers?
Right. I mean, so in the past 15 years, it's always been fun to want to dream up new features, sort of like exercise your creative juices in your brain and come up with something new. But time and time again, I think we find about 95% of our customers, when they give us feedback, they're not really asking for another app. They're not asking for new features. What they usually want to see is they want to be able to do the work that they do frequently in an easier way. They want work to be streamlined from multiple apps into one app, so that things can be done faster, right? They expect things to just work. They care about performance, right? And at the core of all of this is always, I would say, trust and security is the foundation of everything that we have to do. If you lose that, then you'll essentially lose all the credit for all the other cool work that you've done, right? If you violate that trust or that security. So ultimately, I think it's an interesting dilemma, because in order for us to give the user more, they actually want to see less, right? So that's where prioritization is really important, but it's also important to think about how do you personalize the app, because ultimately, as you've heard many times today, you'll always get polarized feedback. For every feature that you put out there, you'll always find a number of a group of people who love it and another group of people who says, "I didn't ask for it, go away. What are you thinking about?" So it's important for as you're thinking about features to figure out how do you there will be users who will find value of this. How do you get your feature to reach to those users while not shoving that down the throats of everyone else.
Cool. And then Chris, for you, you work in an agency, you get an opportunity to work with a ton of different teams in different industries, and you probably see a lot of copycats happening and staying ahead of everyone else. So with that, how do you get people to think differently so that they're ahead of the curve?
Yeah, there's unfortunately, the world we live in, there's no way to prevent copycats. If you come up with a great product idea that's unique, someone will rip it off. It's just the nature of the world at present. That being said, it's important to remember that ideas are cheap and easy. Implementation's hard and expensive. So with that being said, I use 3 key philosophies when dealing with copycats specifically. The first one is keep your competitors close and your customers closer. And that's pretty self-explanatory. The second one is build a product vision that is 2 to 5 years, that incorporates not just customer insights and feedback, but also competitor analyses, industry trends, market trends, insights from your product teams and stakeholders internally. Build a product vision that will help differentiate you from the competitors in the long run. And then the third and final thing that I like to do when dealing with copycats is be sure to implement well and fast, and emphasis on the well. And when I say well, I realize that a lot of features or products will come to market first, but they didn't do it well. And then someone else will come behind them and supplant them. So it's important to make sure you keep these three things in mind when dealing with copycats. And if you can do that successfully, over time you'll eventually create barriers to entry that will make it more difficult and less profitable for your idea to be copied.
Cool. And then sticking with you, Chris, but going a little bit different, I want the audience to get a sense of how you all are working internally. So as we look at the future of business, it's kind of imperative that we know what's going on. And things are always coming from the top down. And what we talked about last week is that you guys have a customer first mantra. So it's what does the consumer want, not what do the people internally want. So knowing that you guys have a customer first mantra, what is your role as a product leader saying of how do you get everyone aligned behind this? Is it coming from the top down? How do you get people kind of wrapped around your vision?
Yeah, the best way to get people aligned to a clear vision is to create customer empathy. Well, next question is like, how do you create customer empathy? The one thing that I've done in my career that is successful in every single job, every single one, is present user research, use that to create customer empathy, specifically qualitative user research, not just the quantitative. So doing customer interviews, doing usability tests, and also doing ethnographic field studies, meeting customers where they are naturally using your product. Doing that will, and presenting that, with videos, pull quotes of real customers experiencing using the product that you work on and own will, I don't know why, but it tends to galvanize people to action and creates like a little mental shift towards the customer. Once you present that user research, especially if you already have a hypothesis that is backed by the user research that you're doing, or your user research validates that, you will get all the resources you need to accomplish your goals. Your stakeholders will be tripping over themselves to throw resources at you. So please do your user research, qualitative, also quantitative, to make the case for improving your product by reducing customer pain points.
Great. And then Ryan, on that theme, Tiger Teams, which awesome name. I think we need Tiger Teams at Amplitude. With you guys especially, you have senior leadership, so you work with the SVP of marketing, and he says, you know what, this is what our team is working on, so he signed off on it. So what's the advice we give to PMs in the room to get the senior leadership to sign off on projects that we're working on, so that we know that we have the entire company bought into the direction that we're going?
I think Chris kind of just answered that. Using that as a starting point. So part of the Tiger team is doing the customer research and making sure we're going in the right direction. So we have there's the discovery side and the delivery side. So the Tiger team is focusing on the discovery side, which is doing the user research and making sure that we understand what the problem is. We use like an experience canvas, work our way all the way through it. We validate, or then we prototype our idea, then we test it. And at that point, we then have we have the user research that we've already done. We've done user surveys, user studies. We've actually user tested what we think we want to build in order to solve that. Once we've done all that stuff, it makes it a lot easier case to pitch it to leadership, saying, here's everything that here's all the research that we've done, all the things that we've done, and here's how much money we're asking to build this, or here's the team that I need in order to build this. And when you go to leadership with all that items, it's really easy to get them to sign off on something like that.
Great. The next question I was hesitant to ask because I'm oftentimes on the receiving end of being told no. But how do you guys think about saying no, politically correct? So it's the scope creep of like, this just doesn't fit into our roadmap, because I might have a customer who really wants something, but we just don't have time to do that. So Ryan, kind of going on that, how do you say no to either the consumer or to internal teams?
Sure. So I mean, like the easy answer is just say no, but not everybody likes to hear that one. I've learned over the years that saying no and having people actually like respect that answer, it usually comes from actually taking the time to hear what their request is, understand it, doing the research on it, and then coming back to them, presenting, here are all the reasons why we can't do that. I meet with my stakeholders on a biweekly basis, and we compile user research weekly, and we review it as a team weekly. So we have a really good understanding of what all the features that are coming in as, and when features are coming in, we do quarterly planning, but about a month before the quarter starts, I start going ahead and we start doing high-level estimations for everything that's on the list. We just work our way through all the requests that are on there. And so we put dev efforts against that, design efforts against that. And then I work with the stakeholders to try to put some sort of business value against some of these things. And for consumer, we can't just go to the customer and say, what's this value for you? So we have a few different ways how we can guesstimate what the value is going to be for the customer. And then we prioritize that for like weighted shortest job first. So then when I do go back to my to like the stakeholders or whoever's requesting that feature, I can then go ahead and actually explain to them, we evaluate your feature, I understand what you're trying to get at, but here are the other items that we're looking at. Our dev capacity is this, we can only get these items in here, and this is why it falls below the line. And when you present it to them that way, I've had very responsive feedback from them, and understanding why we're doing what we're doing.
Awesome. So the short answer is you'll overwhelm me with information so that I won't bother coming to the future with questions. So I appreciate that you actually did your homework. Gooi, with that, so Ryan says you have a good argument as to why you're saying no. So when you have your metrics and your goals that you're working towards that they might not align with this, what are the goals and metrics that you are holding your team accountable to so that this feature creep isn't coming up and getting in the way?
So goals and metrics, that's an interesting one. We look at a whole bunch of them. There's 3 sets that I would say are important to us. The first one is definitely around engagement and retention, because that that's sort of like a revenue slash money maker survival metric, where if you don't measure it, you don't have users coming in, you're screwed, right? The second one is set. We look at qualitative set because there's only so much that we can derive from the data, and we're always looking for patterns of whether or not users are finding value and whether or not they are responding to the product the way we want them to respond. The third one is an interesting one where in addition to engagement, what we want to measure is we want to actually start. We started to measure impact, right? So in the world of like what we're doing in my team, we are building solutions to help users become more productive, right? So we work with the Outlook team, we work with the various parts of Office clients and Windows team to help users identify opportunities where they can become more productive. So for example, if they get a meeting invite, if their calendar looks really full for the week, and let's say if we think this meeting is going to be useless, or is this meeting is something that they can potentially send somebody else, we would figure out who those people are and provide those solutions, tips to users with easy one-click access to be able to forward the meeting to somebody else. Now, when we have a feature like this, how do you figure out whether or not it's working, right? So working isn't quite simply just, people are just clicking and accepting it. You want, the end goal for the user is you actually want to help the user reduce their meeting load, right? Or to help the user build a habit of meeting delegation. So the metric that we will measure there is like, okay, every single week, how much time are people spending in meetings? How much time are people having, meetings that they could potentially send somebody else, right? And we would correlate engagement with our features with whether or not there's actual customer value. And this sort of impact metrics are really important because not only it helps us validate that we're doing the right thing, we're actually giving the end users value. We could also turn around and help users understand, okay, here's what you're getting from engaging in our product, right? Before last month to now, since you've started using this product, we have helped you save, let's say, 10 hours, right, a month in meetings.
Great. And last one before we open it to the audience, as Amplitude, I have a soft spot for product analytics. So Chris, Teresa, where does product analytics kind of fit into your whole PM toolkit?
Yeah. Up until like even a year ago, like when I had started at Outreach, we were sort of working mostly on gut feel and intuition. Like it was almost always clear like what the next thing to build. But as we started scaling, like what we realized that we were basically running in the dark. We had no ideas about whether something that we shipped was moving things in the right direction. So that's when, as a company, we started getting very intentional about making data and analytics an actual part of how we build. And what I've seen, like not just at Outreach, but also at Microsoft, is that analytics is as much about data as it is about culture. Like you need to have a culture that's around being data informed to really make it part of your process. So the nice thing was at Outreach, we had leadership buy-off. And once we had that, we actually had a goal to make sure that every team had a BI person of contact that was working with us. And that was great because now on the product side, we could be very intentional that when we ship something, the first thing that we're going to do, actually, like when we even think about like we need to ship something, like how do we measure success for it? Not just in terms of like adoption, but also in terms of like what is the actual metric it's moving. So an example of something we'd look at is we just shipped this capability. Does that increase overall engagement of this specific type of persona in the application? Like not just whether they're using it, but whether are they coming back more because of it? Are they becoming more sticky because of it? So it's been a very important part of our process now. We plan for it. We make sure that the right things are in place. We, of course, have challenges around making sure that the data is clean and all that, like everyone does. But we report out on it and use that as a way to measure success.
Great.
Yeah, and just to follow up and add to what Teresa said, which was spot on, the way I use product analytics as a product manager is by, it does like 3 key things really, really well, which is first helping orient where my product is versus where I'm going with my product vision, which is really nice. So orientation, number 1. Number 2 is it helps identify opportunities to improve the product. Looking at quantitative data, you can often see trends that will help uncover areas where you can begin doing your homework. And then kind of the third thing is, as Teresa had mentioned, is it kind of helps you determine whether or not the opportunity that you just implemented is actually working as you had intended. And sometimes I've launched features where we were expecting to see this one thing, and then it moved a metric in a completely different direction that we hadn't anticipated, and it was a happy coincidence, but you wouldn't know that if you weren't measuring. So it's really important to measure your products and use product analytics. The other thing I was going to say was it also helps understand customer behaviors and trends, which is also extremely valuable for input for the product management process.
Awesome. So with that, we'll open up to the audience with questions.
Ask your question.
All right, so this is for all of you to take it full circle with how Suzanne opened with an awkward bear hug and embracing negative feedback. What is the best piece of feedback you all have received into your careers?
Negative?
No, it doesn't have to be negative, but sometimes the negative is the best one. So the best piece of feedback you've received in your careers. We could go in order again.
Yeah,
You're allowed.
Fail fast and iterate.
I think it was about, it was from my manager at Microsoft about scaling. Like think about what it is that you can do and focus on that. Is there anything else that you can delegate out to other people or someone else can do it so you can just let go?
I think be a better listener, because you don't even have to listen to your customers, but you listen to everybody on your team, listen to your designers, listen to your developers, listen to your QA, listen to everybody that you interact with, because everyone has a story to tell, and most people want to be heard.
I think for me, it's when I was an early days of being a manager, I got very good feedback that always stuck with me, which is you can't really change other people. You can only change yourself in how you deal with other people. It's something I find actually quite practical, not just in terms of how you manage people, how you break cycles of conflict, but also how you build products, right? If you can't really build products where you have to go convince and persuade the customer that this is something that's good. So just reflect internally on what you can change.
Great.
For yourself.
We spark questions.
Just a quick question. So as product managers, what keeps you up at night? What's the thing that just really is the most difficult in your job that you just stay up thinking about?
Ryan, you look like you have something to say.
Yeah, I was just asked. I did a panel last week, and I was asked the same question. One of the challenges is, as I mentioned earlier, learning a language is hard, and how can we make that easier? But how do we do it in a way that introducing new activities or introducing new concepts? How can we do that so it's actually valuable to you, and we don't ruin the pedagogy of how you learn a language? And there's always a ton of ideas like, well, what if you do this? Well, that's good. It might teach you a word or two, but it's not going to get you fluent in a language, and that's what we're really trying to shoot for, is how can we get you to be fully fluent in a language.
Our friend from UW.
Testing. Hi. Yeah, because I'm a student, so I'm allowed to ask questions. I'm a fan. A student, A+ student. Yeah, I mean, I come from China, Singapore, and now UW. I'm an entrepreneur with global perspective, and my friends and I around the world, we're trying to create this global mentor-mentee partnership to provide a platform for young people to get advice and mentorship. So I know you are all fantastic. And you are talking about feedback, so what do you think of that project, and how may I humbly invite you and everyone in this room to help us and to contribute to this initiative. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. I know there's not really a question there, but I mentor, yeah. I mentor young professionals and new graduates, so definitely connect with me offline and we'll talk. Excited to learn more. Yeah.
To add to what Chris said, it's awesome that you're doing it, because product's something that, an entrepreneurship, it's hard to learn it in school. Like, we have some programs coming up now, but most of what I have learned is just on the job or talking to people or talking to some of my mentors.
I think we're all here to learn, and happy to connect to you and see what I can learn from you as well.
Yeah, come in too.
Great. We have one question in the back, too. Gene,
Hi. I think most folks who are working in a product management space, typically, especially if they're calling themselves a product manager, is working with existing products or within the context of an existing organization. And part of the trap that's hard to avoid is you're measuring the metrics or performance based off of what already exists. Meanwhile, somebody else out there doesn't have that constraint or isn't working within that framework. So the constant challenge, I think, is do you have any techniques that you've been using to figure out how to disrupt yourself, disrupt your own company, how successful, and can you talk about examples of whether that's been successful or not?
So I can take that one. I think, to me, the role of product analytics is really to help validate, right? Product analytics itself is not the source of the vision. So what drives the success of a product is usually the vision. Analytics also doesn't usually tell you why something's happening. It's sort of like just helps you validate whether or not your hypothesis is correct. To that end, I think the way at least I approach product analytics is use it as a validation. Use it as guardrails to continue to iterate to make sure that things are going well, for you to further your learnings about what kind of users are actually using this. Like when you're building this for a specific persona, is this the right type of persona that's actually engaging? And then you have to sort of like supplement that with additional vision to actually move things forward.
Hi everyone. So the question I have is more about how do you build stickiness on a life shelf of a product, especially when you're talking about short attention spans. And I can't tell you what product I'm designing right now in IoT, but I'm hoping that's enough to give you a hint that the audience or the users are probably going to get tired of parts of the app very quickly. So how do you innovate in that space? Thank you.
Okay. Do you guys want to take that? Or? Okay. There's actually a challenge in pretty much, like, if you another person in the audience asks what's keeping people up at night, right? For me, one of my challenges is I need to build a product that can impact and engage end users at work, people at work use apps that their employers purchase, and they are not asking for these things, and they use it because they have to, right? So how do you actually get people to use, use and engage with these features? The key, I think one of the challenges there is that there is no silver bullet there, at least not one that I found. We will always have a certain set of users who will like a feature that we've built, and a certain set of users who don't, right? And I think the key is to have sort of like an approach where you could engage everyone at some like non-distracting, disruptive mode, right? And for the people who do discover the product and they want to do more, figure out how to capture the intent. The intent is really key, right? That's where once they have discovered that your feature, right, then you can introduce them to a little bit more like, okay, this is what I'm trying to do, right? Then you can capture the intent to say, do you want more, or like this is not for me. Some users will say this is not for me, and you can throttle back, right? Some users will say I want more, and then you can actually engage them more. So this is how you start building, okay, without pissing off everyone, right? Who's using your product. You start to identify here are the people who actually can find value, and if they do find value, what we will see is over time they will influence other people around them to say, hey, do you know this is what I'm actually getting from it, right? So there is no one-size-fits-all solution. You sort of have to have a tactical approach where you identify and marry sort of the intent, like people who want to use it versus people who actually don't want it versus people who just don't know about it.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question about, kind of reflective of the think space. I'm always running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and that is because I have found myself in positions where I'm a PM and a product owner and a Scrum Master and it has to do with the culture of the company and sometimes the maturity of the company. But folks sort of gravitate to, oh, you can do that, so guess what? You have this other hat. And I find that I'm just constantly changing, the hat. And how do you manage that? And I'm particularly interested because you've kind of gone from a large company to a smaller company. I'm sure you've worn dozens of hats at any one time. How do you respond to that expectation?
Yeah, it's tough, and it kind of sounds like my life at times. Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do it, but it's really going back to what do you say no to? And the important thing about saying no is it's hard to just say no. Like, of course, you have to listen, but it's also like having a framework within which you can say no. So some of it might be sort of training people around you, like seeing where you can scale, like what are the things that you have to do that no one else can do. Maybe you take that on, but the rest of it, like, can you delegate? Is there someone else that can be trained up to do it? And then it's also honestly having a conversation with your manager, like here's what I'm good at, here's what I want to do, here's what I think should not be on my plate. I can do it for now because it's important for the business, but what's our long-term plan on moving that out? And if you have ideas there, you should just offer that up as a solution. I think that this team should be taking that on. That team does not have enough resources, so maybe we should be hiring for that. So some of it is also thinking about, in an ideal world, what do you think is the best? Like, what should your job be? And what parts of it should you not be doing? And then try and think of, like, how, one at a time, like, how could you sort of take that away from your plate?
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.